Um, so guys, as you may or may not know, my name is Nicole. I'm the Explore PM. Before we get started, I just want to highlight our Explore Hub for the millionth time. go.fiu.edu/Explore Hub. It's your one-stop shop for all of your Explore resources, your live streams, your Notion pages. If you guys are here, please make sure that you try to download Unity if you haven't already, because it will probably not download in the time that this workshop is finished, and you're not going to be able to actually get any coding done. So if you haven't, which I hope you all have, try to get ahead of that as I'm speaking and as Ricardo is kind of starting up. So I'm going to go through the cohorts with you guys today. So this year we're doing Explore a little bit differently. We have 4 different cohort tracks. We have game dev, web dev, AI, and hardware. Same tracks as always, and everyone is still welcome to attend all of the workshops. But if you apply for a particular cohort and you attend all 3 of the workshops and you fill out some surveys that I'm going to give you guys, then you're going to get some special Explore merch at the end. And again, we have that Explore Hub. So if you guys missed something or you kind of fell behind in a particular workshop, don't worry, you can always go. Yes. You can always go and look at the resources and catch up if need be. So for game dev and for web dev, we have closed already, but if you can scroll down, this is the, go down even more. This is the cohort interest form. We're still open for AI and hardware. So AI is going to close next week, Tuesday at 5 p.m. right before that second workshop. We had our intro yesterday. If you guys are interested in catching up on that material, it's also on the Explore Hub. And then we have our intro to hardware next week, Monday, and that cohort is going to close the following Sunday at 5 p.m. So always before that second workshop, you're going to want to have that form submitted if you're interested in that track. Remember, you can only sign up for 2 at a time, but we're going to repeat after spring break. So if it doesn't line up with you guys or whatever, or you're interested in doing all 4 of them, you can go ahead and do the other ones after spring break. So I think most of you guys already have this filled out, so we're going to go to upcoming events. Just a quick reminder though, if you guys don't have that QR code there on the top, it's just go.fiu.edu/initexplore. So try to keep that in mind, and if not, we have our Explore Hub on the Discord that you guys can always go ahead and ask me on there. So upcoming events, like I mentioned, Monday at 4 p.m., there's going to be 4 to 5 in PG6116. We have our Intro to Robotics workshop. So it's going to be the first workshop in our hardware series. If you guys are interested in dipping your toes and kind of getting the feel for that series, please go ahead and join us. I'll give you maybe like 30 seconds if you're interested. It's also all going to be on our Discord, and on that Explore Hub, I have a calendar with all the events and the Luma links as well if you need. Okay, the next one. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with QR codes either, but Tuesday we have our 3rd web dev workshop, which is our intro to JavaScript, and that's going to be at 2:30 at Case 135. Please take a note of this if you're in the web dev cohort, because the time is a little bit different than usual. It's usually 3:30, but we're bumping it up because we also have a MITRE event. If you guys are interested in that as well, it's on the Discord. I'll give you a second, and then next one. Then Wednesday, we have at 4 p.m., this is going to be our first official AI one. Like I said, if you're interested in that, it closes the day before this. It's going to be in PG5134, and they're going to be going through all of the AI foundations, so supervised versus unsupervised, data, different like algorithms for AI. So that's super cool. And then I'm not going to give you guys this QR code because I didn't want to give you like 5 different QR codes. But remember, we have the last game dev workshop next week, Thursday, this room, same time as always. And if you've gone to all the other ones and you go to this one, then you're going to get some cute merch. Now I'm going to give it up to Mr. Rajiv to talk about build applications. Come here. Come here. Don't be shy. Get on camera. Take the mic. I know you don't need it.
I'm not already. You guys have probably already seen me. How does this work? I'm going to put it a little bit because I'm already loud. You guys already probably seen me in your classes. Please raise your hand if you have. Good, so I have a good amount of you. But just to reiterate once again, Build is our semester-long project that you guys collaborate with your peers. So go build an actual project that you can put on your resume for recruiters to go and see that you're actually doing something. Unfortunately, the classes here are not going to be enough to kickstart you onto your CS journey. So this is what we banded together to come do and build for you guys to actually have good experience on your resumes. Now, it's open, but the deadline does close soon. It closes next week, Wednesday. That's 2/5/25. Please come join, spread the word. Most importantly, spread the word about Build being open right now. We also have the same tracks that we do for Explore. We have game dev, web dev, mobile dev, and AI. For game dev, there's to build 2D and 3D, and then for each of those tracks, we have from beginner all the way to advanced. So please come join, sign up, and spread the word. Thank you. And now I'll be passing it over to Ricardo.
Thank you. Good? Awesome. Before we start today, I want to say thank you everyone who showed up. I think we have a lot of consistency throughout the workshop. And I'm really happy you guys keep showing up to the workshop, so that's really awesome. So for that, I wanted to show you guys something different. Who's not here the last workshop? Not here? 1, 2? Okay, so not that many? Okay, good. So, last time I showed you guys a picture of Lethal Company, right? And almost everyone had played the game. Now, what I want to introduce to you guys is something different. Who knows what game this is? Nobody's going to raise their hand. Nobody, right? That's the whole point. Every time somebody shows me a project, they feel like, I don't want to say ashamed, but they feel like, oh, you're not going to get the point or idea of my game, right? We all have different creativity levels. We all have different ideas. We all think differently, right? So don't feel like your project is not good enough. Just because the audience that you currently have, it's not the right one, doesn't mean that you're not going to find the right audience, right? So that's why I wanted to show you guys this. This game is called My Summer Car. Look it up. I'm gonna give you guys more details now. Hold on. Right. Let's try to solve this riddle, okay? All right. I don't know if this is the right amount, but this is a symbol and another symbol. This is a riddle. Anybody want to guess what the words are? You guys better start guessing because I locked that door. Throw guesses. Huh? Okay, first word. You guys can guess letters, but you guess the whole word. All right. There you go. And then we'll pretend that it says audience, right? Why is it important to target your audience? Even though your project is unique, is different, you can't find the right people to play your game, target your audience. This game that I just showed you guys made, where's Rise? This sucks. $63 million. Nobody here has played it, right? But the game made $63 million. So it's still successful, right? Don't you guys agree? So what I want to say with this is, even though your project might not seem for everyone that you see around you or whatever it is, my technical writing professor here at FIU, Dr. Malish, who was taking classes with him, awesome. Target your audience. That's one of his key things for his class. Target your audience. It doesn't matter if your audience is not here. It doesn't matter if you target your audience and you will find success. In game development, in computer science in general, in an application, in anything that you're building, as long as you target your audience first, you're gonna find success, right? Okay, awesome. Start the workshop. So, last time we were not able to finish the whole code for our player model. I'm gonna show you guys how to do one line that I forgot, and after that, we're gonna create our own NPC, right? Good. Any questions so far? Anybody not caught up? Anybody has a question regarding anything in the workshop? No? Good.
But it's okay.
Ask me as I go. Guys, ask me questions.
I have like 7 characters.
Ask me questions throughout the workshop, okay? I want you guys to understand, at the end of the day, I'm gonna teach you guys a formula, but it won't be everything, right? This is sort of to give you guys an option for building your project. Anything else that you're thinking about building. Maybe this helps you. Or maybe what I said in the beginning helps you. Anything that you can get from this workshop to help you towards your projects is success, okay? So ask me questions throughout. All right. Okay, so I already have Unity open. If you guys open your code, today's workshop is gonna be kinda code heavy. So I would try to make it as fun as possible, but still, it's gonna be sort of code heavy, right? Raise your hands, who has not taken any programming classes here? I asked in the beginning, but just in case. Who has only taken programming 1? Okay, who's programming 2? And then who has taken programming 3, which is systems? You guys taking systems or taking systems? Okay, so average.
I passed 1 and 2, I haven't taken systems.
Taking systems, okay. Right, if we open our player code, it looks some, oh yes, yes please. Turn all of them off. I think we have to turn all of them off. Just hopefully nobody falls asleep. All right. This is how we left it last time. The only thing that I added was this. So I want to go over this line of code real quick, right? So if we, I'm just deleting what you guys don't have, right? So we go back to Unity and we click play on our scene. Biggest problem that we're not able to fix was whenever we are walking, we're walking, but whenever we walk sideways, our character does not turn, right? So that's the only thing we were missing from the last workshop. So that should be pretty straightforward. Anybody has an idea how to do this, by the way? Wrong answers are totally fine. Yes?
You rotate the player model 90 degrees counterclockwise.
Right, basically, right? So, all right, let's do the code for that. In order to rotate the player model, we first need to create a variable, which is public game object, and call it player model, right? So we have to transform our rotation whenever we are pressing one of our keys. So if we're moving forwards, backwards, to left, or right, that's when we're gonna rotate our player model for now. So we'll just put a comment here and call it rotate player. The formula we're gonna use, it's player model dot transform dot set position and rotation. Right, so this takes a couple parameters, and I'm gonna walk you guys through it. It's a little bit of a long line of code, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible so that everyone can understand it, right? Do you guys know the difference between me accessing the transform here and us before accessing the rigid body in the move position? Does anybody want to guess the difference? Anybody want to say anything?
Sorry, repeat that?
The difference between the transform and the move position in the rigid body up top. Yes?
Instead of actually moving the model, the player rig is moving like the whole model.
Right.
Your model dot transform, you're only like editing the position of the actual model. Like
Right.
the model.
Right. It's reason I want to make it a question is because it's really confusing. Up top, we're moving a rigid body, which moves with physics. So we are moving the position of the object. But under here, all we're gonna do is rotate the object. We're not gonna rotate anything else. Even though it says move position, we're gonna leave this position to how it currently is. In other words, it's gonna be pure visually. Nothing is gonna actually move. It's just gonna be rotating, right? So let's start coding this line. We're not actually moving the position. The first parameter this takes is a position. So we'll just pass it this, that transform, that position. Okay. Okay. So first parameter, everyone can read that, position, right? Second parameter, a quaternium. That's the worst form of variable that there is. It's so complex. Who has worked with quaternions before? Nobody, right? Okay, that makes sense. I still to this day don't understand it. I work around them, I use them, but they're basically X, Y, Z, and W. What the W stands for, I still have yet to find out. So it's a 4D vector that just works like black magic. I have no clue, right? So, but that's what gives our player, in this case, the rotation that we currently have. So let's say we need to add a rotation, right? We could use this formula and then, come on. Okay, so all I'm doing there is setting the rotation to 0, 0, 0. Why? Because if I'm looking forward, I want all of the formula to be 0, 0, 0. If I'm looking left, will be here in the y-axis will be negative 90. And then if I wanted to look right, it'll be 90. And if I just wanted to look backwards, it'll be 180. Everyone understands this? It's important that you get it up to this point so I can keep explaining. If you have a question, it's totally fine. Yes?
Did you just say there were 4 variables, X, Y, Z, and W?
Quaterniums, yes.
You have only 3.
Yeah, because we use a formula which is kind of a cheating formula, quaternion de Euler, and that sort of turns it from 4 to 3. Welcome to the club. It's super confusing. So this sort of turns this whole weird formula into 3 so far. Everybody gets it so far? Yes.
Turns into 3.
I thought about all night, just see how if I could explain it in a very simplistic way. Again, there's no way around quaternions. Quaternion is such a weird variable, it's hard to explain. I guess it's the rotation, because when you are in a position in a 3D space, you are in your X, your Y, and your Z. But when you're rotating that object, you sort of have another angle that could rotate in a different, again, it's really weird to explain. So all it is you have your axis that you rotate, but if you rotate in a certain position, it's sort of, that's where that W comes along, and it overcomplicates everything. But we're not modifying directly anything in a 4D quaternion, so for now. But eventually you will have to. I've had to, so, and it's very complex. But for now, we won't have to modify anything like that, right? So if we put this to 0, and then we just copy this whole line, and why am I not using my mouse? Okay, let's copy this whole line here, and then let's paste it and moving back as well. But moving back would be 180, right? Because we got to turn it around or play it completely. Now, before we finish that code, let's not modify anything else. Just save it as is and go back to Unity. Because I want to take you guys step by step why this is not, while this is correct, we still got to add a couple more things to it. Right. So this player model, it's going to ask you to add the player model here. Just make sure to get your player model that we built last workshop and drag and drop it in there. right? Everyone good so far? Okay, so we click play, and I didn't make any mistakes. If we walk forward, it'll look forward. Backwards will look backwards, right? Now, what's the problem that it has currently? It's snappy, right? That looks ugly. Now, that might be what you're looking for, but not everyone. So, if that's what you're looking for, you have it set up already. You're done. But we could add more to this code to make it more fluent and more efficient, right? And pretty overall. Let's go back to our code. That's why I wanted to go back to Unity so you guys can see it before doing it. So we know that this right here, it's what's rotating our model to 000 or 0180, right? We just have to make it in a smooth transition so it over time gets to whatever value we want, right? So Unity has something called, I'm gonna delete this, copy it so you don't have to write it again, but we're gonna use something called quaternium.lerp. Anybody wanna guess what lerp is? Super simple. Yes.
Probably gonna assume easing rate.
Huh?
Probably gonna assume easing rate.
I don't know what that means.
Like sign in, sign out. Order in out.
Lerp just,
From one point to another.
right. Lerp just means it creates from one point to another point, and then it just smoothly goes. It's like it creates another section of the code that it runs until it gets to whatever value you set it, right? So quaternium.lerp, it's gonna fix the problem that we currently have, and all we gotta do is pass the parameters that it currently takes. So if you see there, it takes quaternium A, which is the rotation, original rotation that you wanna go, to rotation B, and then it takes a float. The float is gonna be the speed in which we are gonna turn our object, how fast or how slow it's gonna rotate. So we could achieve the same thing. If you wanna make it snappy, just make your float 100 or whatever, and it'll be snappy again. If you wanna make it super smooth, just make it a small number, and it'll work the same way, right? Everyone good so far? Okay. So first, we gotta pass the original rotation. So we gotta go back to player model, dot transform, dot rotation. And then our second parameter would be our Euler angle. So I'm gonna just paste what we had. That's why I told you guys to copy it. And then comma, and then we need a float. You don't wanna make this float a static variable. So you wanna make it a variable that you could change. So make another variable here, public float, and then call it player rotation. Copy player rotation, and you're gonna paste it here, and that should be good to go. Right? Now we wanna multiply this, again, times time, that delta time, like we did down here for our player. You wanna multiply everything times that delta time whenever you're working in your update, because your update is not like your fixed update. It's not gonna always run the same consistency. So always multiply times seconds, so that way it's easier. It doesn't run different on different specs. All right, I just click enter here so it's visible. So this is the code, right? That's the whole line of code that's gonna make a player turn to 000 smoothly. Anybody has a question in this specific line? Want me to explain it again? Want me to go over it again? Okay, in that case, then just copy that and paste it in all of them. And when you're looking backwards, you're gonna change the 0 to 180. When you're looking left, I believe is -90, but verify that. -90. And then when we are looking right, it's gonna be just +90. We'll confirm that that is correct as we play. Let me know when you guys are ready. Who's still writing? Okay. I'll give it a few seconds. If anybody needs help or a question, I'll be willing to help anybody. I'll go to your desk if you want. Everyone's good?
Wouldn't it be 270 instead of negative 90?
I'm sorry?
Wouldn't it be 270 instead of negative 90?
No. Yes, but no, because we are working in a local space, and the local space, negative 90 and 90 will be to the right. 0 will be forward and 180 backwards. So I get what you mean if you're talking about world space, but since we are working locally inside of another object, it's just gonna be 90. But you have a good point. Again, we'll test that out, make sure that I'm right in here. Okay, so let's go back to Unity and test that out. Everything we have built so far. Very important. It's gonna ask you to reference your player model here, and it's also gonna ask you your player rotation. Make sure this is not 0. If this is 0, then it's not gonna rotate at all. So change that number to, I don't know, just the lower the number, the slower it'll go. The higher the number, the faster it'll turn. So if you wanna make it snappy, just make it really fast. All right, so let's just put it to 50. I don't know, just to try it out how that feels. And I'm gonna just click play. And if I didn't mess anything up, it should work. So I'm walking forwards, backwards, left, and what the hell?
Can you put it to Z instead of 1?
I did? That makes sense. Right? So this is why play testing is so important, see? Okay. Yeah, let me see what that I did. That's good.
It's on Z instead of 1.
Okay. It just happened when I turned right. No, what the hell? This is not it. Visual Studios. Okay, when I'm turning right.
Yeah, it is on Z.
Oh, it is, yeah. Good catch. That's a really good catch. Okay, there you go. Now, if we go back to Unity, we should be good to go. So I'm actually gonna lower this value a little bit because it's too snappy for my taste. And then just click play. And then now, if we turn, see, it's a little more. And again, if you want to make it super slow, you can just put this, I don't know, to 5, and it'll turn around even slower. Just depends on your taste. Depends what you're looking for, right? Okay, so. Okay, let's add just one little thing to this script, and then we'll move on to NPC. Okay, so let's add, I'm gonna add it just because it's quick, add a sprint option. Who can come up with a sprint option really quickly? It'll be super easy. What are we doing to move our player? What's in here that we can modify, that we can move our player? Move speed, right? Who said that? Awesome. So, if you wanted to sprint, what would you do in that case?
Well, when you're holding shift, you would increase the value, and when you let go, you decrease the value back.
Perfect. Now, the only thing you're missing is how do you let the player know you're sprinting?
Oh, you have to change the running animation.
Right, you could do that.
Yeah.
That's the right approach, by the way. But we don't have an animation. What would you do?
Wait, you said, how would we let the player know when you're sprinting?
Right. You were right with what you said. If you have another animation, that would be the way to do it. I know a way around it, and I'm trying to see if you can come up with it.
I'm not sure.
They're putting pressure on you. Go.
I mean, you already have the walking animation, right? Can't you just like double the speed?
Yes. Were you going to say the same thing?
I was just gonna say that maybe you could have the illusion of like pulling the camera backwards.
You could do that. You could do that. But yes.
I was going to say a lot of games when they're on this type of budget with like a lack of animations, they just put like a sprint, like a speed icon above the player's head.
Right. You can mix all of them, but the one that I go for is I make my animator just slightly faster, and that's it.
You mentioned a running animation?
Yeah. But in this case, we don't have a running animation. So what I'm trying to show you guys is do the best with what you have. Whatever the approach is, just try to achieve whatever it is. So in this case, we're gonna move the speed. So we're gonna go down here somewhere, and let's just call it sprint. And then let's put if input dot get key. Oh my God, I can't type. Get key. Would it be get key or get key down? Be loud. Come on.
Get key.
Get key, right? Because you're gonna, you have to hold it, right?
Just get key down.
Get key down is you press it once. Get key is when you hold it, and get key up is when you let go of it. So you want to make sure it's get key. So when you're holding it, you don't want to like, well, you could make it so you press it and then press it again and it'll disable. Depends on the approach you want to take. But in this case, it's just press it down, and then you put here key code, dot left shift, I think is what it's called. Yes, left shift. And then all we're gonna do here is, you said move, modify the move speed, and it'll be what? What's our original move speed as of now? You know what's gonna be easier? Let's create another variable. So we don't have to go back and forth. If you change your mind later, you could just change the variable. And let's call it run speed, right?
But then what do you
Oh, we need to create another variable, and it'll be 3. What do you guys prefer? Efficiency, 3 variables? Well, not efficient using 3 variables, or efficient and just going back and forth between Unity and you know, you'll have to go back every time you're gonna change your running speed. You have to go back to your code and check what you had. What do you guys? Yes, back there.
What if we use multiply the move speed like times 1.2?
You can't. Yeah.
Wait, can you just make a run multiplier?
Right. That's what he says. Okay, let's try it out. I'm not sure you guys where you can't, but I think the way that I learn is I learn by making mistakes. So that's I've thought about that many times. So let's go move speed and times 2, right? Right?
But instead of times 2, it's times run multiplier, and it's another field in Unity. So you can do everything in Unity when you're editing the speed.
So you want to create another variable?
Yeah, multiplier.
Okay. But let's do this approach first so I can show you guys why you can multiply, right? So we just put move speed times 2, right? And then else move speed is equal to, I don't know, whatever the move speed is. We'll check once we go back. Because you guys don't want to, nobody wants to create another different variables for it, right? We just want to go efficient. Raise your hand for efficient. Okay, lower your hands. Raise your hand for creating 3 variables. It's just 3 variables, guys. That's not gonna make a difference. Okay. No, we'll go efficient. We'll go efficient. I want to create what you guys want to create. Whatever approach works for you guys. Okay.
Yeah, if you multiply, it won't go back, right?
It will, because we're setting it back to whatever number it is.
Yeah, I know you.
Okay, before I test it out, what's wrong with this code? Question if I want you to answer or not. I'm thinking about if I want you to answer or not. You probably know the answer. I'll get back to you. Hold on. Yes.
It's multiplying itself. So it's moving it like.
So move speed is, let's just say it's 20.
Yeah.
20 times 2 is what, 40?
Yeah.
So this should be 40, right? Yeah. So running speed will be 40, right? Right? Back there.
Wouldn't that code keep like repeating itself over and over as you?
Is that what you were going to say?
I was gonna say something different.
Okay.
I was gonna say like it's not gonna update.
Let's test it out. That's exactly what's going to happen. Remember, this is your update. This code is going to run 60 or 100 times per second. So it's not going to be 40. It's going to be 40 in the first FPS, in the first second. Then it's going to be 100 million whatever. Let's test it out. All right, let's go back to Unity. It'll probably crash, but it's fine. All right, so if we press, we're not sprinting, so we are good. As long as we press sprint, there you go. All right, whenever something like that happens, just play quickly, because if it gets to a weird number, it'll crash your entire Unity. See, it already threw a couple errors, right? So, yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen. It's gonna keep multiplying, and it'll never end. So very, very important. Remember, your update runs, where the hell is my visual code? Oh, here it is. All right. Your update runs as fast as your computer runs. So if it's crazy, it'll be crazy. So this cannot be, I think I saw our walk speed is 25, move speed, I don't know. So this has to be a static number. So if you guys don't want to turn to a variable, it has to be, I don't know, 50. Let's go back to Unity so I can check. This is why having two monitors is awesome, because you don't have to go back and forth. You can just look here and look over there, but this is how it is. All right, move speed is 100. So run, you guys want to make it what, double? So 200 for running? Okay, so go back to Visual Studios. This is because you guys didn't want to create variables, by the way. So 200, and then if not, then we set it to 100, right? And the only thing that we're missing to let the player know that we're running is we're gonna get our animator, which is player animator, and what's the function called? Speed? Okay, speed equals 2. There you go. And then when we are not running, speed will be equal to 1. Again, this number doesn't have to be 2, it could be 1.5, 1.3, 1.7, just depends on your animation. Okay, everyone's typed so far? Everyone's good? Okay, let's go back to Unity. Okay, so now if we click play, that should work flawlessly. So if we sprint, see it looks a little funky, but does the trick for now. I let go shift, let go, run, let go, and then we have that, right? Everyone's good here so far? Okay, now let's make our NPC. Okay. For our NPC, we need another player model. We have a player model here already within our player. You guys see what I'm clicking over there? So let's just copy and paste this from here so we don't have to, go through the assets and find where the model is again. So we could just use the same thing that we had here, and I'm gonna just copy and paste it outside. Right? You're gonna go into your Unity and move it somewhere else. And you could call it, instead of player model, call it enemy model. Enemy model. Okay, that was dumb. So, yeah, you could go into wherever the prefab is. You could do that approach, but I just went inside of player planet, went to player model, copy player model, and then pasted it outside, and then just rename this as something else. If you go into player model has a bunch of different skins. So if you don't want it to look the same as the player, just change body and head, disable this, and just enable whichever one you want. Let's go with number 8. This is a super nice asset that has a bunch of stuff, right? Oh, there you go, perfect. So there you go. That'll be our enemy, right? Everyone's good here so far? Anybody has a question? Anybody has a question that doesn't want to ask? We're good? Yes? Okay. So, when creating a NPC, first thing you have to do is go to, yes?
How do you switch bodies?
Go open your player model and then disable whichever ones are active up here and enable any other ones. You have 20 different characters actually. You can pick and choose any of them. You don't have to they don't have to be the same number either. You can just pick and choose whichever one you want. All right. First thing is we have to set up, fortunately enough, Unity has its own pathfinding and it's called NavMesh. So we're gonna go here up to window and it should be AI and navigation. Right? Oh, that's right, this changed recently. Okay, here we go. Ignore that it says obsolete, doesn't matter. Everyone saw how I did this? So window, it might look slightly different for those on PC, but it's all the same thing. It might be a tab to the right or something like that, but it's all the same thing. Window, AI, and then navigation. This one that says obsolete for some reason, I don't know why. They're probably changing something different. Then we're gonna bake our pathfinding for our player, right? So we need to make whatever our player can walk on has to be static. That's just the way Unity does it. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do that. Yes.
I don't. Never mind. Hold up.
Okay. In the inspector,
No, I'm not getting the same values.
you're not getting the same variables. What do you mean?
I'm getting like name, radius, height, step height, and so.
You're choosing the other one. There's two of them. Make sure you guys have a floor. Make that as big as possible for now. Make that 20 and 20. And make sure it's static up here. Up here. You guys see it up here? Once it's static, then you're good to go.
I don't have the other one.
If you go to Window,
Yeah,
AI,
I don't have that. I have the NavMesh updated and navigation.
everyone else,
What version of Unity are you running?
yeah, if you have a diff,
The latest one.
oh, that's why, yeah, if you have the latest. I'm surprised you were able to open the project in a different Unity version.
No, I wouldn't. You just brute force it and just open it.
That's wild. You guys are crazy. I don't know why you guys did that. Yeah, you have to open it with this specific version that I gave you. I mean, the new one might be somewhere else. I don't really know where it is, to be honest.
I'm on Unity 6.0.34
Yeah.
F1.
Yeah. If you don't have the right Unity version, that's why I specifically said on the first workshop, make sure to download the right Unity version, because if not, then Unity changes so drastically from one version to another, there's not much. But you should be able to find it. I would just do a Google search, make sure how to find the navigation for the old Unity and the new Unity. I don't know. This is 2022, so you probably have the latest one, yeah. Okay, so once our floor is static, we're gonna go to navigation, and we're gonna bake our navigation here. So again, this might take longer depending on how complex your map is, but our map it's super simple, so it's not gonna take long for anything. You guys see how it looks blue now, right? So that's where our player can walk. Our AI can walk wherever it's blue. So if you have other objects or anything within your map, your player would avoid depending on how you set this up. Your radius, it's gonna be how, if these two were too close together and the radius was too big for them to fit within those two, then that wouldn't be a walkable path for the AI. So again, that'll depend on how complex your map is. So you might have to have different variables depending on your map. Your height, obviously, if you have anything on top, your character as well won't be able to go through. And step height will be if you have two hills, they're too inclined, your AI will also not be able to climb those. So just be aware and look at wherever is blue, your player will be able to walk, right? Okay. So once we have that, we gotta go to our enemy and let's make our enemy a empty parent, just in case. Okay. And let's call it enemy AI. There we go. Everybody saw how I did that? Just right clicked on enemy model, create empty parent, and just call the enemy AI. Good? Okay. Now we need to add a NavMesh agent. NavMesh agent is basically what's gonna move our player around in the NavMesh. So we have a NavMesh, which is where a player could walk, and the agent, which is the agent's gonna walk on the NavMesh. Everyone good here so far? Okay. You could set up the height. We can't see it that well here, but we could set up, see how our agent is a little bit taller than our player. You could maybe set it up, height maybe 1.8, 7, there you go. And then the radius, is it me or is it offset? I can't see anything. Okay, let's make the radius a little bit smaller, 0.3. By the way, you gotta be careful with these numbers. If you make it too small, they might go through the map. Yes.
Should I just like re-download Unity?
No clue. If you look it up, has anybody been able to do that in the new Unity?
Yeah, just download the old version when you get home and just switch the versions of the project.
But yeah, because the code will work anyways. All you have to do is just bake the NavMesh. But nobody's able to find the NavMesh in the new Unity. Again, I don't use the new Unity.
No, I have like the.
You have to find
I
out.
have the NavMesh, but I can't find Bake.
Did you search it up? Because I haven't used the new Unity, so I really want to. I don't know.
I looked up a guide for it. I think it's outdated.
Okay.
Hold
Everyone else is good so far? Good? Okay. Okay, so now that we have the NavMesh, keep me updated by the way. Now that we have the NavMesh agent, we're gonna create our AI script. Let's call it, I think there's one called enemy AI already. NPC AI script, right? You can name it whatever you want. Just make sure it's not the same name that as the other code that I have on the project. If it's the same name, it'll throw a bunch of errors. So just careful with that. Okay, so we're not gonna need our start, I don't believe. All we gotta do is just get reference our NavMesh agent. But for that, we gotta import a library, which is you found out how to do it?
Yeah.
Is it weird? Is it just hidden?
I'm gonna create like a window for it. I clicked on the floor, and the floor itself has like a. If you right click, it has a tab for the AI map.
And it works the same way? You can bake it as well?
Yeah, there's a button to bake the thing.
Okay, okay. So you go type in using and then Unity engine.ai. Make sure to type this, otherwise your variables are not gonna work. Super important, right? Everyone here so far?
I kind of missed everything we did before.
No, I didn't do much. Just show you real quick. All I did is I went window, AI, here, and then just bake with standard. Once it looks blue, right?
Yeah, the floor looks blue.
Okay, once it looks blue, you're good to go. Just have your enemy AI this way. Add to your enemy your NavMesh. So here, NavMesh agent, and add that variable. Just leave them by themselves. You have that already?
No, hold on. I need to do all of that first.
So your AI should have your NavMesh agent and the script for the NPC that we're building now. Good? Okay. How do we, anybody have an idea how do we take this approach? All we gotta do is check, we're building something kind of simple. All we're gonna do is check if the player is nearby, we go towards the player, and then we attack the player. That's the whole point, and we're building that game mode in the last workshop. But for now, we're just trying to build the logic behind the NPC. Any ideas how do we get a player nearby? Yes?
Basically, we like subtract the position from the player to the position of the enemy.
Okay.
If it is within a range, then the enemy follows the player.
That is super good, but it has a big flaw. You could do that approach, no problem. Anybody want to guess what that flaw is? The main problem with that, you know the problem?
I think so. For example, if the player approach from behind, the enemy is going to notice.
Yeah. That's another flaw. But the main flaw is that you have to reference the player. If you're building something, try to build it as solid as possible. You might be able to reference your player, sure. But let's say that you have a game that you have 200 enemies. Are you gonna go each enemy and like reference the player? Like we have here. This is a reference, right? If we drag and drop that reference, we have the reference to whatever we want. If it's empty, it's gonna throw a no error. We're on the same page? You guys understand what I'm saying? Sure? Okay. If we need to reference, in order to know how far the player is, we need to have a reference to the player, right? There's no other way. We need to have a reference to the player somehow, right? If you have 200 enemies, you got to reference one by one. Sure, maybe you feel like it and you're like, you know what, I'm going to reference all 200 players. Sure. If you kill those 200 enemies and you got to spawn new enemies, then how do you get the player again? Because you're doing all of that in runtime. So once you spawn a new enemy, the enemy doesn't know who the player is. That variable is not referenced anymore. So for example, to give you guys an example, let's say that we have public game object player, right? And we save it and go back to Unity. This player is going to be referenced. Let's just say that this is our player, right? So I have just one enemy. Hey, what the hell? Let me just reference it. I have a reference there. It's good to go. If I click play, my enemy knows what my player is. But, and something very important, is there's things called prefabs. Prefabs are objects that you have within your project that you could reuse in runtime. So for example, if you got to spawn a new block, if you got to spawn something that's not within the game, you have to use it as a prefab and spawn it during runtime. So how do we build a prefab? We drag it and we drop it. Now this is a file within the game. You guys saw how I did that? This file within the game is something that we could reuse and spawn anytime. So let's say that we wanted to create another player in code. Basically what we're doing is getting this player and dragging it here. What do you guys see? There's no player. Because the player is here for the enemy that's in here. Once this enemy is killed and you spawn another enemy, there's no player anymore. Because you don't have access. What's going on in your scene, it's different from what's going on in here. You have your files and your project, but your scene does whatever the hell it wants. If it's within your scene, you're good to go. You could access everything within your scene. But if it's not there, you got to find another way. Does that make sense? So while the approach is really solid, and I've used that approach many, many times, the better way is using trigger colliders. Anybody want to guess what a trigger collider is? Wrong answers are totally fine. Doesn't matter.
Something touches the enemy's radius, it'll track
Right.
the buffers, whatever.
Right. It's similar. So regular, yes.
Basically an invisible area, basically where if a player touches it, it doesn't.
Exactly. So a regular collider, it's like a wall. You can't go through it. A trigger collider, the only difference is you can go through it. Once something is inside of it, you can access anything that's inside of that trigger. So we're going to put triggers on our AI and just check whatever comes close to our AI. If you want to make it so it's super realistic that only the player can see forward, then you make that trigger in this direction. If you want to make it so it's everywhere, then you make a whole big trigger around the player. So it just depends the approach that you're taking. But with this approach, you fix all of your problems. Now let's say you need to access a player. Let's say you're making a multiplayer game and you have 10 different players. How do you know who's there? No problem. Check who's inside the trigger. That's the player we're going to attack. Make sense? All right, now let's code that. So to make this, let's delete this too. And actually, let's delete this as well. Okay. Right click so it doesn't look ugly. Prefab, unpack prefab completely. I didn't do anything. I just made it not a prefab anymore. Okay. We need to add a collider, and let's call it put a box collider, right? That box collider is going to be around, you could edit it here and make it as big as you want. So let's just put 10. How big is that? 10. Is that too big? Can't see anything. Okay. That looks good-ish enough, you could say? Okay. Yeah, let's make it a little bigger. 15 and 15. We don't have to make it tall. It's pointless. Okay. Let me remove the floor so we can see it. Oh, you can see it even worse. Okay, never mind. Okay. Oh, that's good. Okay, can you guys see that around the player? That's gonna be our trigger collider, right? The difference to make this from a collider you can hit to a trigger is you just press here. That's it. That's all you press. You put that, and it's not a collider anymore, right? We could go through it. Okay. Let's go to our code. Okay. So this code is inside of the object that has the trigger, right? Therefore, if we use this function on trigger stay, on trigger enter, on trigger exits. Right. If we use this function inside of the same object that has the trigger collider, it'll run. But make sure that it's inside in the same object as your trigger. Otherwise, it would not work, okay? Anybody want to guess the difference? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Difference between on stay, on exit, and on enter? It's literally right there. You guys think I'm kidding. I will lock that door and nobody can leave until I say so. I'm kidding. I'm a nobody. I'm not, nobody's going to listen to me. Yes. Yeah.
When
Guess one of them. Only one of them.
I'll do, assuming when it says on trigger exit, we make it so it stops chasing the player. 'Cause no longer
You're doing the code. That's not what I asked. But yes, you're right. It works how you said it. Yes. You have on trigger stay. That's the only one left.
It's on trigger stay. Okay, so I think we'll just like update as it stays inside the collision.
Right. So on trigger enter and on trigger exit runs once whenever something enters and whenever something exits. But it's very important to know it runs once. Very important to it runs once. How many times does it run? Once. Right. On trigger stay runs same as your update. It's gonna run consistent all the time. It's very important to know that on trigger enter and on trigger exit runs once. Super duper important, because to be safe, the way we're gonna approach this is on trigger stay, we're gonna check if it's our player, and we're gonna follow our player and attack our player. On trigger exit, if our player exits where we are, we're gonna stop following our player and leave them alone. Here's the problem. It's gonna work perfect. But if you're launching a game, you gotta have a backup. This is the right approach, but you gotta have a backup for it. Why? Because if your computer skips a frame and on trigger exit because it runs once, doesn't run because your computer skipped a frame, your game is glitched at that point, right? So you want to have a backup for that, either in your update, you want to check, I don't know, how long the player is following the enemy. Again, many approaches, but very important. It runs once. So if your computer skips or glitches or anything happens, freezes, whatever, it's going to throw an error. Or it's going to stay idling or do some weird stuff, right? So just keep that in mind. Right, so our trigger takes a collider as a parameter. How do we know which one's our player? We go back to Unity. This has a collider as well. So if this goes inside of the enemy, it's how do we differentiate between a random collider and our player? Anybody have any guess? Yes.
Maybe
you've used Unity before. Okay, so what we do is we tag all of our stuff on our game, right? So we select our player and go here where it says tag. You can do two approaches. You can do tags or you can do layers. I personally like doing layers. You could do either or. Layers, you could do a lot more with layers, but tags are totally fine as well. Choose whichever one you prefer. It doesn't really matter. So, the problem with the better thing with layers is that you could sort of have certain things collide with other stuff. So like for example, if you want your triggers to not collide with something else, you have in Unity your option for not colliding certain things, whereas with tags you can't do that. So like for example, the biggest example I can give you, even though it's another approach, but I'll give you this example anyways. The biggest example is if you have a shooter and you're shooting towards an enemy, if your enemy has a trigger, your raycast, it's gonna hit that trigger. So again, with a raycast, you could also put it to ignore triggers. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm gonna answer your question. For a raycast, you could put it that ignores triggers, but with layers, you could also put it that it doesn't collide with a specific trigger. It'll work for certain things. So it's just one of those things. I prefer using layers, but it doesn't make a difference. You just might come across an example that you need to use layers because you need to certain things to not collide with others. If we go, here, these are all of our layers. So if you don't want player to collide with enemy, you just unclick that and the two colliders won't collide with each other. Certain things that I've come across, So I just like using layers, but there's no difference. You can pick either or. A tag is just check the name of it. That's all it does. A tag doesn't do any more than that. You got a question?
I feel like I'm falling behind on
How behind? Where'd you left off?
I'm kind of stuck on the box collider thing because I can't move it.
What do you mean? What box?
I'm editing the letter, it's not moving. Yeah, I can only scale it.
Oh, you can edit it here.
Yeah.
And it's better, just put everything to 0, 0, 0, and then put those values
0, 0, 0 on this, on the center.
0, yes, and then 0, and then put the size to be like, I don't know, 5, or if I put 20, 20, and 20,
Okay, yeah.
and it'll be center.
Wait.
And then make it, after that, click on trigger, it's trigger. Oh, you have it already.
Yeah, I have the
Yeah.
But where's the box collider?
Hold on.
How do you tag the parent?
Huh?
How do you tag the parent?
So here you have tags, and here you have layers. I'm gonna show how to do it now.
Okay.
So if you want to add a layer, it's there, and if you want to add a tag, you also click there.
Okay.
Anybody else has a question? Guys, it's okay to ask questions. It's totally fine. I don't bite.
Am I supposed to also have the enemy as a prefab or no?
That's from an old workshop that I just give you guys that just in case you like fall behind. You could always default to that and just see what I did.
Okay, okay, so, wait, hold up. Where do I move the, is this it? What? No.
I would do everything through here. Don't look at anything else. It's just hard to visualize because you have where you currently are. Now put that at 0.
0?
Yeah.
Then,
And your size would be the bottom one. And then put, where did I left off? Okay, yeah, so I forgot what I was. Okay, let's go back to our Unity and I'm gonna show you guys how to layer your object, okay? So back to your player, go to layer, and you're gonna click add layer, and let's just name this layer player, right? Player, enter. So layer number is number 9, right? Remember that number, very important. Okay, so I just put player and then go back to the player again. Click on layer, player, and now we're gonna apply the layer. It's gonna ask you if you wanna change everything. Yes, change everything inside. That just means that it's gonna change everything inside of this player. If you don't want that, then just put no, okay? So now we know that our player is layer number 9, right? So we go back to our code. Let's go back to NPC.
It's giving me the option to like change the children.
Yeah, that's what I just did. Yeah, you can put yes, and it'll change everything inside. Okay, so in here, on trigger stay, we're gonna check if the parameter, we take a collider called other, right? So we're just gonna check is other dot game object dot layer. Make sure to put game object. You have to go to game object parent class first to get to layer. Layer equals 9. Wait, I didn't put this inside of an if statement. Okay, if other dot game object dot layer equals 9, then this is our player, right? So we need to reference our AI. We don't have to have a variable for our player. We need to reference our AI. So let's put public NavMesh Agents, and this will be this agent. Name it whatever you want. All we're doing is getting the NavMesh agent script that we have already in our enemy, and we're referencing here so we could use in our code. Everyone good here so far? Okay. All we have to do is, if we know this is our player, then this agent that set destination, simple as this. Other that game object that transform that position. So, what is it I'm doing here? I'm on my trigger function. Inside of that, I am checking if my collider, it's layer number 9, which can only be our player. Whatever we set to layer number 9, that's our trigger, right? That's our player. And then I'm checking inside, I'm saying, okay, if this is our player, then we're gonna go to the destination. We're setting the destination of this agent, and we're setting it to the other that game object that transformed that position, which is basically, in a fancy way of saying, whatever my player is, right? That makes sense? Okay. So we have a way to sort of follow the player. We need to make sure we don't follow the player as well. So we just copy this whole if statement here and paste it inside of the exit, right? So if we exit, we don't want to follow our player anymore. This is basically, I mean, depends how complex you want to make it. I've done, if you want your AI to roam around, you could just put a set of different locations that the AI could go. But in this case, we don't have to do anything fancy. We could just say that the AI stays wherever it currently is. So we'll just put this, that, transform, that position, right? So in other words, whenever our player comes in, we're gonna go follow the player, and we're gonna stay following the player because this is on trigger stay. Whenever a player exits, we're gonna just stay where we currently are and not move anymore. Everyone good? Okay. So we can just save that and go back to our code, and then we gotta do our animator as well for our enemy. But for now, we can just make sure it works before we start coding more and more. All right. We have to reference our NavMesh agent. So it's the same, just grab it from here, drag and drop it, and you're good to go, right? Simple as that. And if you want to change how fast, how slow your AI moves, it'll be here. This is your speed, your acceleration. Again, that'll all depend on your enemies, your map, the speed of your players. So just remember to play around with these variables here, okay? So if we click play, okay, let's make sure this enemy is far away from our player first so we can see it working in action. And something very important is make sure that your enemy is close to your NavMesh. You don't want to have this gap. because a lot of times it'll throw an error in Unity and your agent won't move at all. So make sure you put it as close as possible. There we go. Okay, so if we click play, it should work. All right, so our enemy is currently not doing anything. They don't really care about us. As soon as we hit that barrier of the collider, they should be moving towards us. Oh, there you go, see? So it moves, right? Now the only problem that we have is we have two problems. One, it's not animating properly, so we gotta change the, why is it, this is glitched. Okay, we gotta fix that. It's not changing animations, so we gotta put so it walks whenever we're walking, whenever it's following us. And the second one is if we stop, it just goes through us, right? And we don't want that, that looks pretty ugly. So we gotta fix those two things. Everyone here so far, good? Okay, so let's go back to our script. And we're gonna basically do the same thing we did for our player controller. Just do our animator the same way. Public animator and call it enemy. What the hell?
I don't know what that
And call it enemy animator. That was funny. Right, so we said, remember, this is why I like using an integer. I know you guys probably don't remember, but if it's 0 on the animator, it's idling. If it's 1, it's walking. And I think we didn't do any more of that. Okay, but if it's 2, it's running. If it's 3, it's jumping. But the way I like doing it is always the same variable. So I don't have to go back and forth to my script or to my animator. So I'm just gonna get my animator, copy this here, and here we're following our player, right? So in here, I'm gonna just make space and paste that. Enemy animator dot set integer. Remember, I called my, you guys have it as well. It's called state. So it's easy to remember. Don't change it for any of your projects. Trust me, it'll be a lot easier. So state, and we are following the player, so it'll be 1. And then we just copy and paste it down here. And if it's 0, it's idling. Oh, no, not 10. If it's 0, it's idling. And 1 parenthesis. There you go. Right? So whenever we are here, we're following the player. It's 1, we're walking or running. If we're here, we're idling, not following the player. So it goes back to 0, right? So let's go back to Unity. And we need to reference our animator, which should be in here, right? Our animator is inside of our enemy AI. So we go here, drag and drop the whole object, and it'll just pick up the animator, because that's the specific variable that we're looking for, right? If you guys want to go back to the animator so you can refresh, you click on it, and it takes you back to the animator. If you remember, we had an integer called state, and it's 0. And then we have different transitions. We go from idle to run, and the transitions are whenever state equals 1, we go to run, and then whenever state equals 0, we go back to idle. So you guys should have this set up already, right? Everyone good here so far? Anybody have a question? Is anybody lost? Good? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. The animator, just click on it, and you should click on the object that has the animator, and you should have the tab for animator open here. If for some reason it's not there, just go up and go to window, and somewhere here, animation, animator. Yeah. So those are the two approaches, okay? Right, so if we click play now, the enemy should transition between idling and running. Okay, I just found a glitch, but I'll show you guys what it is now. There you go, see? So it's already chasing us, right? Okay. Damn, the glitch that we have is in our player script. Why do we have that glitch? Are you guys getting the same glitch that depends on when you're rotating, it won't look forward? Yeah, right?
I'm getting a different glitch.
Yeah, because I don't think we use the camera parent for that. I gotta look into that. All right, so I'll try to fix it before the workshop ends. I just think we have to get the reference according to the camera parent, not locally. Okay. Right, let's keep going with the NPC. So we need, this is what we have so far. Let's create a variable and let's call it attack. It'll be a Boolean, public bool, attack. And then let's do something here. If we are following the player, attack equals true, right? If we are not, then attack equals false. I'll give you guys a second. Okay, we need another variable, which is public, let's create a float, and timer to attack. So what I'm building here is I just want to have a timer that whenever we are following the player, it'll start shooting at the player, right? So it'll start attacking. And we're going to go into a couple more, hopefully we're able to finish it. I'm hoping we do. We're going to go into projectiles and instantiating prefabs and a couple other things, okay? So far, everyone's good here? Okay. So we are going to create a timer. So copy your attack, and we're going to check if attack equals true. Remember, this is our update, so this is going to be running all the time, right? If it's true, then we're going to use timer to attack equals timer to attack minus time dot delta time. All I'm doing here is creating a timer. Let's say timer to attack is 2 seconds. Whenever this 2 seconds, it's going to be subtracted by seconds. Whenever it's 0, then we're going to do whatever, operation we decide to do, right? In this case, we're building a system to attack the player. So we're going to check here and check if timer is less than or equal to 0. Then that's where we're going to make our move, right? Okay. Okay. Everyone here so far? Who's still typing? Nobody? Okay. I'm going to save that and go back to Unity. Once we go back to Unity, we need to create a projectile. So in this case, we'll just make it super simple. Go here in your scene, right click, 3D object, and let's create a sphere. Does that look too big? I think it is. Move it in front of the player so we see that it's not super massive. Okay, move it around a little bit. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, it's a little too big, so let's just put this to 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. 0.3, 0.3, and 0.3. That's good enough, right? And to add physics to it, the same way we added physics to our player, we're just gonna add a rigid body to it. Everyone here so far, good? You guys saw what I did? All I created is, yes. Right, so all I did was I created a capsule collider, and then I just added a rigid body to it so we could have physics, and then that's what we're gonna instantiate every time the enemy attacks the player. Does that make sense? Yeah. Make sense? Good? Everyone else good? Good? Okay, take that as a yes. Right, so now that we have physics, we have to, let's call this, I don't know, we could call it projectile. And then you have to make sure, put it anywhere you guys want, but you have to make sure you put it, ooh, I have the same name already for something else. Okay, let's call projectile new new. Make sure to have this name because I have already this for a different workshop set up, and you don't want to have two prefabs with the same name. That might throw an error. So that's it. We have that. Just drag and drop it down here, and it's a projectile, right? If you want to change the color of it so it's more noticeable, you could right click here, create material, and then I don't know, call it black. Yes, right. Okay, there we go. And then pass the color to the sphere, and then change the color up here. So if you go up here and change it to black, there we go. We have that already set up, right? So we have this set up already, right? So we can go back to our code, and then we'll set a variable for that projectile. So let's go public game object projectile, and then we have our timer, and we have if our timer gets to 0. Whenever a timer gets to 0, we're gonna instantiate the object, right? So let's go instantiate. Oh, you write it, I think. Right. And then this takes a couple different parameters, right? So actually we need another variable. When you instantiate something, you gotta give it a, so instantiate, all we're doing is creating something in runtime. So we're getting something from the project. Remember how I told you guys the scene is one thing and the project is something else? Instantiate is gonna bring something from the project into the scene, right? But once you bring something into the scene, you gotta give it a position. So we don't know the position that we're gonna give it yet. So we're gonna create a variable for it, and let's call public, let's make that a transform. And that'll be, I don't know how you guys want to name that variable. Projectile spawn position. There you go, that works. I misspelled it, that's totally fine. Okay, copy that, and then this instantiate takes the object that you're doing. It takes a bunch of parameters, but the one that we're going to use in this specific one is the object. It should be the first parameter. The second parameter should be a position that you want it and the rotation that you want to create it. Okay, so spawn dot position in this case because we turned it into a transform, and then spawn position dot rotation. Right? Does that make sense? All I'm doing is I'm using instantiate. I'm passing the object that I'm creating, passing a position where I want it to be at when I create it, and I'm passing a rotation. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, so before I keep writing this code, I want to show you guys what that does because this code is going to get a bit more complex. So let's go back to Unity. And our enemy AI, it's going to ask for a projectile. So make sure to make sure not to pass the one inside of the scene. Super important. Actually, delete the one inside of the scene. Super important. Click on your enemy and pass the one inside. Oh, wait, that's not it. Okay, it's prefab. There you go. It's somewhere here, right? Okay. Okay, make sure to pass the one in your folder, okay?
So you delete the projectile?
No. So just click on it. Yeah, the one inside of your scene, yeah, delete it. Okay. But make sure you have it on as a prefab first.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, if you have it as a prefab, yeah, delete it from your scene because it's gonna cause, that's gonna be a problem. From your folder, drag and drop it where it says projectile. From your folder, super important. If you drag it from here, all you're doing is dragging a local object. After that local object gets created, it's gone. From here, you have unlimited resources. Let's just think of it that way. You can create as many from the actual folder. Does it make sense? Okay. So, and we need a transform position to add where it's going to get created.
I'm not getting projectile timers inside projectile spawn position. I'm not getting none of that.
Wait, you're not getting one?
I'm not getting time to attack, projectile, spawn position.
Well, spawn position, we haven't done it yet.
No, but I'm not getting that in the script, the thing.
Did you add it as a public variable?
Yeah, I did.
Do you have this as public variables?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let me see. Well, you have an error in your code somewhere, I think. Transform, go down to where we were doing the code. No, you're not passing the parameters correctly. It's that position. That position. This, the spawn position. Remember, look at the code how I have it. That position.
I don't see this.
Okay. It's position, dot position. And then here is dot rotation. That's what you're missing. So it's throwing you an error. That's why it's not. Okay. Let's go back to Unity, and we need a spawn position for the bullet to get instantiated, right? So let's go right click inside of the enemy, and let's just create a 3D object. Let's just create a sphere. I don't know, sure. Make it a little bit smaller, 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. And then we just want to move it around to the same place that we want our projectile to instantiate from, right? So somewhere here, I would say, move it around, according to your liking. That looks totally fine. And then once you're done, remove all of this. You don't need any of this. But make sure to have it, once you have it in your position, remove your sphere collider and remove your mesh, because you don't need it at all. All you need is a local position to know where you're going to create it, okay?
It's still not showing up.
I don't know. Give me a second. Once you're here and you have this in here, drag and drop, and that's going to be your position, right? Everyone good here so far? Okay. Now, once you click play, that shouldn't throw any errors. So at this point, the enemy, it's not instantiating anything. They're not attacking, okay? So as soon as we get close to them, they're going to start attacking, right? Right? And if we do it again, it'll be the same thing. Okay, there we go. Right. So we have many, many problems in this script. Who wants to start guessing what the problems are? Come on, throw something. Anything.
Too many projectiles.
Too many projectiles? Sure.
The projectiles aren't disappearing after.
Very important. Anyone else? You had your hand up?
I was gonna say
Basically, when the projectiles are released, they are totally randomly, so they are not following a direction.
Right. Behind you?
The player moves back every time
Yeah, that could be a problem. Yeah, that could be a major problem, actually. You could go through walls and things like that. So yeah, you could definitely, yes.
It's not targeting the player.
Right. So all of those issues are totally correct. The reason that it's currently going towards the player is because it's creating so many that it just needs room and it goes all around, right? But we don't want that. Why is it doing that? It's because we're not resetting our timer. It's running all the time. Our timer is 0 always, and it's gonna run all the time. Second problem that we have is it's instantiating in front of the enemy, but it's not going anywhere towards the player. It's just staying there, right? So we gotta fix those two issues now. And then the last one is, look at all those objects. That's basically the same thing as the garbage collector. We gotta take care of everything. If we just start throwing stuff here, your game is gonna crash immediately, right? So we gotta make sure we destroy them after we use them, right? So let's fix those three things. Which one do you guys want to start with? Okay. Huh? Destroy them? Okay, destroy them is super easy. So destroy them, we're gonna go into the object and we're gonna add a script to it, right? And let's call it destroy, I have that a script already. Let's call it delete item, right? Remember, I'm adding the script to the projectile that we have, the prefab, right? All we have to do is just open this, and then we just need an update and a variable. Just put a float and call it timer to destroy, right? And then in our update, timer to destroy equals timer to destroy minus time, that delta time. If timer to destroy less than or equals to 0, then destroy that game object. Does that make sense? That's simple code. All I'm doing is a float, subtracting it. If the float is 0, destroy this complete object. It's going to destroy the object and the script. Yes?
I'm getting like errors, a lot of them now. Okay, I can't even like create a script now. Yeah, I click on the thing, it's not letting me like create a script now.
I have no idea. You still on the newer Unity version?
Yeah, I would have to go back home and to read.
I don't know. Were you able to fix the enemy AI script?
No.
Click on the enemy AI script.
Maybe
No, on the thing here. The name of it. Click on the name of it.
yes, yeah.
Okay, look, go down. Keep going down. I don't know. It doesn't even show you where the error is. Is that VS Code?
This is
Yeah. VS Code, yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. It's something in here for sure. Because yeah, I see some errors. If you have an error in one of your scripts, Unity won't allow you to do anything else. So it's definitely something in here. Now what it is, I have no clue. Okay. I don't know, man. I have no clue. I have no idea. All right, we have, guys, we have 20 minutes left. Let's just try to make the most out of it. I just want to finish that NPC script, and then we're good to go, all right? Just make it real quick. Okay. So you guys saw how this works, right? All you have to do, delete this, and now we go back to Unity. We go back to, not the Unity Hub. We go back to Unity, and we click play. Remember, we added the script inside of whatever is getting instantiated at the moment, right? So if we go and approach the player, it's going to be the same thing because we haven't fixed the other issues. Actually, why is it different now? What the hell? I have no idea why it's different. Oh, I know why it's different. You guys know why it's different?
You didn't set the timer.
Exactly. So I just left it to 0, so it's being deleted all the time, right? So you got to change this to, I don't know, 5 seconds. And then that's a good catch, by the way. That's a good catch. Right, so if we go now, it'll do the same thing. And then within 5 seconds, do not fall, please. Within 5 seconds, there you go. All of them are deleted. First problem, out of the way, yes?
Better question. Would it be better if we add an option to delete it when they hit the player?
Yeah, you can do that as well. That's normally, but remember, not every bullet's gonna hit the player.
Yeah, so what options? If the bullet does not hit the player, delete after 5 seconds.
Yeah, you can do that, but now you're making it a little bit more complex. Depends. Like for my last build, I built one of this bullet script, very similar. And what it did is whenever it hit anything, it'll just create an explosion. And that explosion was made out of, have you guys played the game that you shoot paint? What's it called? Splatoon, it was almost identical to that, right? So it'll just create a paint explosion and it'll leave, everywhere. And again, it depends the approach you want to take. But yes, and then if you hit the player, I also put it'll make a different sound, different particles, and if you hit something else, completely different. So yeah, depending on the approach you want to take, yeah, you can definitely take that approach as well, right? Okay, so we have, they get deleted already, so now we just gotta make this a bit more complex. Let's go back to our code real quick. Okay, there we go. NPC, here we go. So we are instantiating the object, right? But we're not resetting our timer. So we need to put our timer to be timer equals, you could put it so it equals 3, for example, but it's good to make your games a little dynamic, right? You don't want the enemy to shoot every 3 seconds, for example. You want it to be a little different. So a good function is random.range. And this gives you a range between a minimum and a maximum, right? So you could put 0.5, comma, I don't know, 3.5, sure. Okay, make sure to put the F after the values. Otherwise, I don't know, throws an error. Something very important with random.range, I just want to bring it up because it just came to my mind now. Whenever you are setting them up, read this before. So minimum is inclusive and maximum it's also inclusive. But for int, it's different. Oh, what are you doing? Okay, there you go. For integers, it's different. For integers, is minimum is inclusive and maximum is exclusive. Why is that important? If you put 1 and 3, just means that your 3 won't be part of the random range. Super important. Because, for example, if you're putting, the way that I use this is, I don't know, if you have a bunch of, you have an array, and your array is 10 length. If you put this at 10, they will never get to that 10 item, right? So just make sure to use this accordingly. It'll vary. Your float doesn't matter, but your int does. Does that make sense? Good? Okay. 15 more minutes. We'll push through. Okay, so now that we have random.range, the timer gets reset, right? So we just have to, how do we access, how do we get, in order to shoot the bullet in the direction of the player, we need 2 things. 1, direction of the player, if we want to make it super accurate. And 2, we need the rigid body of the bullet, right? Or the projectile. So how do we get that rigid body if we don't have access to it? Can anybody come up with, no? Anybody think? When do we have access to whatever we're creating here? We don't have a variable for it yet. This instantiates the object. But in this same line, we have access to it. Not before, not after. But when we're instantiating it, we have access to the object. If you don't make it into an object, you don't have access to anything that's inside of it, right? Does that make sense? So the only thing that we have to do is change this line and make it into an object. So let's make this a game object and call it projectile object, sure, right? So all I'm doing is changing it and having it as an object. Why do I want it as an object? Because now that I have access to it under here, I'm gonna access its rigid body. Rigid body, and then we're gonna just call it rig or projectile rig, so it's easier, equals, copy this, that get component, rigid body. Okay, so what does this mean? All I'm doing here is I was instantiating my object here, right? I'm creating the bullet in front of the player, the enemy. But now I turn that into an object. Now I have access to an object. I have an actual object. And under here, I don't know where I put the range, just so it's not as confusing. Let me take out the range and put it under it. Right, ignore the range for now. Under that, I'm accessing the rigid body of this object, and I'm getting it through a function that it gets a component that it's within this object, and that gets me access to the rigid body. Why do I need the rigid body? Because the rigid body is the only way that I can add force and push it forward, right? That's the only way I can get physics into that. Everybody understands? Sure? Yeah, so before this, all we're doing is we're instantiating the projectile in front of the enemy, right? Now, I need to access a way to have the rigid body to give it physics and, I don't know, projectile towards the player, right? So the way that I can do that is only accessing the rigid body. I don't have access to this unless I turn it into an object, and then from that object, I access the rigid body of the object. Here, I don't have anything. Here, I have the object. Here, I already have the rigid body. Under here, I can do anything I want with this rigid body. Add force, do whatever I want, because I already have a variable. I have access to this at this point. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. Right. So now that we have that, technically, we could do this. And use this function that is called add force, right? We have 10 minutes. I don't want to make it super complex. Okay. We have a function that is called add force. What that does is it adds force in the direction that you want, and it'll be as fast as you want, as slow as you want. Don't go crazy with add force, because if you put a variable too big, it'll go through walls, it'll go through everything, right? So you don't want that. So let's do this, and let's create another variable and call a float and have a projectile speed. Why is it? Oh, float. Projectile speed, right? So projectile speed will be how fast this will go, but we also need to know the direction. Just for the sake of time, I'm not gonna make it super complex, but if you wanted to make it so it aims, I think one of you guys said it, so it aims towards the player, what you have to do is you have to get two 3D vectors and subtract them from each other, and that gives you a straight line between a 3D position and another 3D position. Super complex for 9 minutes, right? So instead, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna get the position that the bullet is being instantiated from, and I'm gonna use that forward. And that's gonna go forward in front of the enemy, right? So that makes sense. So what was that variable called? Spawn position. So let's just go projectile spawn position that forward. And then we just want to multiply that times projectile speed. Right, so that makes sense? All I'm doing is getting the position that it's currently being instantiated to, that forward, and then multiplying it times a variable so we can adjust how fast or slow it goes. Make sense? Good? Okay. So if we, this is, by the way, yes?
Where did you get forward from?
Forward is this function in Unity. For every transform that you have that forward and that right, which we use for the player as well. Yeah. This works, but again, always have a backup, because your computer will glitch, a frame will skip, things could happen. So just to make sure that this doesn't throw an error, always go project rig is not equal no. And then run that in here. Again, because you just never know. Maybe whenever this code ran, you couldn't access the game object or you couldn't access the rigid body. This is gonna throw an error and crash your game. Instead, we just put it in here to make sure no error is thrown, and then you're good to go. So we just want to make sure that's not null, right? So we click save and we go back to Unity. I think we finished right on time somehow. We need the speed to modify it. Okay, make sure the time to attack is, I don't know, 3 seconds. And then projectile speed might need to be a little faster. Let's just put 200. And then we click play. We might need to modify the variable of speed. All right, and then we go towards it, and then give it 3 seconds. See, there you go, it's not fast enough, right? But if we change this to 600, I didn't fix that, it was going through us. See, so it's already hitting us, right? So if you put that to, I don't know, 1200, again, you're gonna have to change the values depending on what you're looking for. See, so it's already a lot faster. And then from here on, which again, we'll do in the last workshop, we'll just make sure we can get the player to shoot, and then we'll just get both of them to interact with each other, and I'll show you guys how to make them collide with each other, get whoever you're hitting, and we'll add health to both of them, and it'll be your little game mode, right? I'll try to make that as quick as possible. So that way I would love, no promises, but I would love for us to finish the next workshop in an hour. And then the last hour, us to just talk about certain things, projects. I even have a project, my build project from 2 semesters ago. If you guys want to try it out. Again, for us to talk about things, game related, game dev related, and anything you guys have. All right, awesome. You got a question?
I need help.
Okay, I'll go. Awesome. All right. Okay, awesome. Stick around. I'm in no rush. Thank you, guys.